Hello, I'm Jyotika. Welcome to Excelling Psychology. In today's lesson, we will learn how to answer section B for paper 4. We are taking the June 25 paper as an example, and with the help of that, we will learn how to structure answers, what content to cover, how to meet mark scheme requirements, how to read the questions and understand what is required, and how to address the marks given in the question. So the objective is not to make you memorize the model answers that you can see on the screen, but with the help of those model answers to make you learn how to answer section B. I've already covered section A in the previous video in this series. That was on how to answer approaches questions. So if you haven't watched it already, I strongly recommend you watch that one and then come to this one. This lesson is equally suitable for Oxford AQA International Psychology students as well as UK AQA students because issues and debates is a topic for both the courses. Before we begin, I just want you to know that I am a private tutor for Oxford AQA International and UK AQA Psychology GCSE and A levels. So if you want to schedule your classes with me, my email ID and contact number are available in the description box and pinned comment below. Okay, so let's begin with today's lesson. First, we see an application question, and how we immediately know it's an application question is because a scenario is given, and then something is asked in relation to that scenario. So we know right off it is AO2. If at the beginning only we can identify what is the assessment objective of an answer, then in that case we are able to read the question in a way that as we are reading, we are forming the answer in our mind as it would be required. Let's read the scenario. Tariq says psychology should be about finding causes for human behavior so that laws can be identified. Etta says, I disagree. We have many opportunities to choose when and how we should do something. Looking for general laws is a waste of time. Using your knowledge of free will and determinism, explain Tariq's comments and Etta's comments. Okay, it's just got repeated here, so I apologize for that. Now, what we have to do in this question is firstly, whatever we write about free will and determinism, all of it has to be relevant to what Tariq and Etta are saying. We are not to give general descriptions of what is determinism and free will. We can begin with saying, for example, Tariq is supporting a deterministic view. But then immediately in his statement, how we see the deterministic view, we should come to that. Same thing for Etta. We can say that she's supporting a free will view, and then in her statement, how free will is reflected, we have to describe that. No general definitions of determinism and free will. So, no AO1 content. Also, because there's no AO3, no strength or weakness has to be given. So, no critical thinking. For the structure of this answer, because it's 4 marks, we have to give 4 points. So, simply we can name what Tariq is doing in the sense which view is he supporting, and then we just explain it with reference to what he has said. And then we just repeat it with the, instead of Tariq, naming Etta and then explaining her comment. That's all. As I've told you in the previous video also, you can take as much word count as you want and all. There's no fixed word count or number of sentences, but make sure you're giving 4 points in total to justify 4 marks. For example, don't just say Tariq is supporting determinism and Etta is supporting free will. That's just 2 points. It won't get you 4 marks. Also, for these type of questions, where one person is supporting one side and the other one is supporting the other side, I strongly insist on signposting. Some students will just keep saying that, for example, Tariq is talking about specific causes of human behavior, and so general laws can be developed. But nowhere in the answer they will use the word determinism. They will not say Tariq is supporting determinism explicitly. You cannot leave it for the examiner to understand which view is being supported. They've directly told you, like, use these concepts and explain what they are saying. So make sure you name outright that this is what Tariq is supporting and this is what Etta is supporting. Okay, so let's look at the model answer. I'll explain to you more with the help of that. Tariq's comment reflects a deterministic view of behavior. So firstly, like I told you, signposting, clearly saying this is what Tariq is supporting. Now, the explanation of it, like why are we saying that he's supporting determinism? Because he's saying behavior has identifiable causes. And which can be identifiable causes? We can give examples from what we've learned in determinism. Biological, environmental factors can be there. And if we have causes, then we can predict behavior and general laws can be developed. Because he's talking about general laws. So we are saying, okay, because he supports determinism, there will be definite causes of behavior, and so general laws can be developed. Another way of writing this, a wrong way of writing, which I was indicating before, would be in determinism, it is suggested that behaviors have causes and so they can be predicted. See, there you're not talking about Tariq's statement in particular. You have to say, Tariq has said that there are general laws, and that links to determinism because determinism says that there are causes of behavior. So make sure you refer to Tariq's comments. So this fits with hard determinism, and behavior is seen as controlled rather than freely chosen. This is a good sentence, but even if you don't write this one, it's okay. You can take it as additional. Here, what is done is direct comparison has been drawn between determinism and free will, because here, after all, two concepts are asked for. So, this is why Tariq is supporting determinism rather than free will. But, like I said, that's optional. Even if you don't write a comparison type of thing, it's not explicitly required, that's fine. If you can, it's good. It shows a contrast between the two approaches and why exactly we can say he's on one side and not on the other. Now, same thing you'll see has been done for Etta. First, there's signposting that she supports free will. And then, why we are saying that? Because free will says humans have personal agency. And when she has said that people can choose, so choosing how to do something that comes under free will. So she sees that behavior cannot be reliably predicted, and so looking for general laws is pointless. So, entirely how her statement is supporting free will, that is explained. All this wording that you see, looking for laws is useless, that is what she has said, right? So, exactly whatever is drawn is from her statement. We can choose how to behave. Okay, so no general definition of free will. Again, there is an inherent comparison by saying that behavior cannot be reliably predicted, trying to say that that is why she's not on the deterministic point of view. Like I said, that's optional. If you don't want to draw contrast, also, that is fine. Okay, so how you can think about these type of questions in your mind? Because students very often say issues in debates is particularly difficult. You've learned what determinism is in general. Determinism is about establishing causation, finding clear cause effects between factors and behavior. So then, whatever situation is given, like here it was Tariq, it could be someone else instead. In that situation, how do we see something being spoken about causes, effects, predictability, and something that can generalize to everyone? That is what you need to look out for. Means whatever you have learned under determinism, causation, predictability, generalizability, these things you have to look out for, and then you have to say, okay, these are the places in this person's views, or instead if they would have described this is what the person is doing, so these are the places in his behavior or in his statement where I can see these things like causation, predictability, generalizability. So instead of going into the general description of what these things mean, you in your mind expand on what is determinism or think of its definition and immediately start looking out for where it is being seen and what is described in the situation. So that is what your thought process has to be. Let's look at the next question. Discuss the suggestion that our behavior is best explained by our nature rather than nurture. Refer to examples from psychology in your answer. Okay, now when it comes to discuss, it's a AO3 command term. Many students don't realize this, they feel it is AO1. Discuss is AO3. It's like evaluate only. So that is why you have to give in terms of strengths and weaknesses. Now, if you've seen my previous video on section A, you must have seen whenever there is a 6 marker and it is an AO3 type, I suggest you take it as 2 points, each worth 3 marks, preferably one strength, one weakness. And you also make sure that you're fully developing each point. You can think of it as the peel format. For 3 marks worth of a strength and 3 marks worth of a weakness, it's not enough to just name the strength or weakness. Okay, they have to be fully developed points. So that thing applies here also. Here also, when I am showing you the answer, I'll show you how it is written in peel format. Now, one question which comes a lot is when they say refer to examples from psychology in your answer, do we have to give multiple examples or can we give from the same topic that we have learned? You can give it from the same topic. When they say examples, they mean that for all your evaluation points, strength and weakness, or if you're taking two strengths or two weaknesses, though I don't recommend that, for both of the evaluation points, whatever it is, strength or weakness, make sure to give examples. Topics can be the same. If they want more than one topic, they always indicate. Like you must have seen the past video also when we were doing approaches. They say two or more topic areas or two or more topics that you have studied. Here they have not suggested that. So they are okay with one topic also. It will be explicitly mentioned if more topics are needed. Another question that comes up is that for the examples, can we take something from year one? This comes up for both issues and debates and approaches. Definitely. You do not have to take only from year two. That's a misconception. That all the examples we have to take are from schizophrenia or psychology and sleep or psychology and work only. Not at all. You can take examples from social influence, memory, psychopathology, whatever you have learned last year. You can take examples from there also. Okay, so keeping this in mind, let's see what points are given. See, one more thing before we begin, like generally, nature versus nurture. Again, because it's not AO1, don't go into the general definitions. Straight off, start thinking about what is the strength of nature or nurture or both. And same thing do for nurture. And then think of a weakness. Don't generally describe that nature is about investigating how behavior is innate or how it comes from genes. That will not count. This is not an AO1 question. This is AO3 plus there is AO2 because examples are asked for. AO2 has to be embedded in AO3. The larger overarching question here is AO3 because it's discuss strengths and weaknesses. Then within that they want examples from your content, means within that they want AO2, but nowhere there is AO1. So don't generally keep defining what is nature, nurture, or interactionist view. That will not get any credit. Okay, so when it comes to nature, and I'm sorry, I just made a mistake. They're saying nature rather than nurture. So it's not like you can think of strengths and weaknesses of both. They want you to think of strengths and weaknesses of nature because here they are talking about a statement is made that nature better explains behavior than nurture. So about that, take a strength and weakness. So I'll just like to correct for nature, think of what is a strength and elaborate on that. And same way for nature, think what is a weakness and elaborate on that. But again, don't give any general descriptions. Even for the example that you take, how that example is supporting a strength or weakness, you have to give that. Not that nature is that behavior is inherited from genes, and then in the example you just say, okay, this behavior is inherited from genes. That becomes totally descriptive. So avoid doing that. Let's see with the model answer and example. One strength is that there is evidence provided by twin studies. So, firstly, signposting. Strength is mentioned. If you're not able to relate with some of the terms I'm using, like peel or signposting, you can see any of my previous videos. In that, I have explained these concepts repeatedly. Today, I don't have that much time to explain everything over again. Also, if you're watching this on Excelling Psychology, which is my main YouTube channel, you can take membership. Very nominal fees are there for membership that you have to give every month. And all these strategies of exam answer writing, I put dedicated videos on those. So you can watch that if you need more help with things like peel format, sign posting, what examiners want in your AO3 or what they want in your AO1, AO2. Dedicated videos are there on my channel. Okay, so coming back to this, one strength signposted, and then a point is given, peel format. So one strength is this feature of the explanation. What is that feature? That it has evidence. Then evidence or example has to be given. Your Gottesman and Shields, which is the most famous study, is cited. Concordance rates established 48% for MZ and 17% for DZ twins. Now, I don't know, recently I was checking so many papers in which students just do not quote concordance rates. So, students come to me, they approach me just to check their papers. And when I check their papers, this is what I'm seeing, that they just say higher rates of concordance in monozygotic than in dizygotic twins. That counts as generic because that is a statement you can make for any disorder. It's not specific to schizophrenia. So, what are the concordance for schizophrenia in particular? When you give that, shows your knowledge of the particular topic that you have taken. Also, in Oxford AQA, everything is marked on a rubric. Even small questions, 4 markers, 6 markers, sometimes even 2 markers are marked on rubric, meaning that they look at the quality of the points, not the number of points. So if you think here on the screen, you can see exact percentages are there in concordance rates. But in your answer, percentages are not there, but even you have mentioned that concordance rates are high in monozygotic. So your answer is as good as this one. Because how many number of points are there in this answer, even you have written those many points. It's not about the number of points, it's as about the rubric. The rubric always says for evaluation that it has to be effective, detailed. Okay, so unless you specify some concordance rates and all, how will detail be shown? Unless you show exactly what is the difference. That see, for MZ it's as high as 48%, and for DZ it's as low as 17%. How is your point being effective? So even if the number of points you have written are equal to the number of points you see right now on the screen, it's the quality of your points which is going to be judged, meaning that you have to make sure your points have depth to them. Okay, so we saw point, a strength is evidence. Evidence or example for it is the Gottesman and Shields exact concordance rates found. Now, why is this a strength? So, in Peel format, coming to explanation. Because genetic similarity is greater in monozygotic rather than dizygotic twins. So, if that is exactly what is being found, that even concordance rates are higher because of their genetic similarity, then that shows that biological inheritance, meaning nature, does play a role in behavior. So, very contextualized explanation of why it is a strength to get evidence from twin studies, because it shows that biological factors are playing a role, even concrete research evidence is supporting this. And then finally, to link, after all, we have to say why a nature based explanation is better than nurture. That is what we are arguing for in this point, because these type of studies make it stronger, or instead of stronger you could say more credible, more valid. Validity is given to the explanation because actual studies exist to support it. Now let's come to the weakness. Same Peel format is followed. So first, signposting. There is a clear weakness that concordance rates cannot be considered as effective evidence because they are never 100%. So, this is the point being made. The feature which is giving a weakness to nature explanations is that the supporting studies have doubt cast on them. Explanation or example of this is that in the Gottesman and Shield study, we don't need to name it again, we can just say same study, only about half of the twins had schizophrenia, like both of them sharing the disorder. But what about the remaining more than half? They both did not share the disorder. In those remaining more than half pairs, only one twin had the disorder and not the other. So, why is this a weakness? Because it shows that there must be something other than nature which also plays a role, nurture or learning, which comes from stress, trauma, or family environment. See the quality of the answer, how specific examples are given of which nurture factors could contribute to schizophrenia. So it is effective and it is detailed. And then to link off the point, the problem with having this sort of contradiction in research is that it weakens the claim that nature will have a better explanation to give for a behavior than nurture. So we can just end it off that way. That's the link. Okay, anytime you need to refer to any of these answers, I do intend to put them up on my website, but it takes quite some time. So, in the meanwhile, you can take screenshots of the answers when I display them on the video and you can use them for later reference. Let's come to the next question. As always, this is the most important question to discuss in any past paper. It's the 20 marker. And lots of questions come up for 20 markers, especially when it comes to approaches or issues in debates. The whole confusion over how much of the score is dedicated to AO1, how much to AO2, how much to AO3, and then how much we have to write within each. So I'll give you all the general guidelines also, and then we look at the model answer also. So first I'm displaying the full model answer. Here we have AO1 and AO2. And on the next page we have AO3. Okay, so right off, you should know the distribution of marks to each of the assessment objectives. Then we look at the question. In any issues in debates or approaches question where they are asking you to refer to topics included in your syllabus and the total score is 20, AO1 will be 8, so nothing is deducted from AO1. AO2 is 4 marks, so from where are they taking out these 4 marks? From AO3. Usually it is for 12 marks in a 20 marker where there is no AO2. But now they trade off between AO2 and AO3. So 4 marks they remove from AO3 and give to AO2. When you look at this only, what you have to take away from this is that AO1 has to be as detailed as it would be in any question without an AO2. You cannot compromise on how much you're going to write for AO1, and I can't emphasize on this enough because we are seeing that increasingly students, whenever they see AO2 is there in an essay question, they just end up writing way too much for AO2. Whereas if you see the weightage is only 4 marks, so very disproportionately they are giving importance to the assessment objectives. You have to give a very good AO1. Recently, again, like I told you, I was checking papers and holism, reductionism, just barely one line definition, sometimes not even that. In some cases, direct reference to two topic areas studied and explaining them with respect to reductionism and holism. You will get some credit of AO1 because definitely when you're writing AO2, some amount of embedding is there of what you've learned in AO1. Like somewhere you will indicate what reductionism generally means or what holism is, but that is barely anything. To justify 8 marks of AO1, which is almost 50% of the total weightage, you cannot just embed AO1 somewhere. First, there's to be a good at length discussion of description of the debate, and then you should come to AO2 ideally. So, again, my strong recommendation is, which I have given you many times before, do not go for that sandwich approach. If that is what you have been advocated in your schools, that keep on switching between AO1 and AO2 points, make sure you're very good at that in the sense you don't compromise on AO1 and dedicate everything to AO2. Make sure of that, because if you're not able to do that sandwiching effectively, you completely overlook AO1, and then your answer is worth marking only maybe out of 14 points. So my recommendation, which works well for most students, AO1 keep it separate, first cover it, AO2 cover after that, so again separate, and AO3 cover after that. Many students feel like the logic given for the sandwich approach, alternating between AO1, AO2, sometimes AO3 also, is that makes it more relevant. Like you've given some AO1 point just now. For example, you're saying reductionism breaks down behavior into parts. Then related to that will you give AO2. For example, schizophrenia has been explained in terms of dopamine hypothesis in particular. Solely the neurotransmitter or neurochemistry part has been broken down. And then you give an evaluation point like this has been supported by, say, the rats and the amphetamine study. I can't remember the researcher's name. So that's a strength. If you can do this, if you can pull it off, AO1, AO2, AO3, making sure all are connected with each other first, that gives the sandwich approach its effectiveness. So can you do that? Be honest about that. Or is it your AO1 is something else, AO2 is something else, and AO3 is something else? Then it just creates muddling, it creates confusion, there's no clarity. So if you're not able to link like a chain all the AO1, AO2, and AO3 sets that you're giving, please avoid that approach. Second, like I said, this is a misconception that this is the only way of keeping points relevant. Even if you give AO1, AO2, and AO3 in three separate paragraphs, even in that case, you can keep linking back to AO2. Supposing you give in AO1 somewhere you mentioned reductionism breaks down behavior into parts. And later on, when you come to AO2, you give an example like dopamine hypothesis has broken down schizophrenia into its biochemical aspect of the role of excessive dopamine. That is how you can effectively link back to what you've already written in AO1. It doesn't have to be that the points have to be right next to each other for you to be able to show their relevance. Even if they come in later, the language which you use, which is aligned, the way you're writing AO2 is aligned with how you wrote AO1. That by itself shows linkage. You don't need to make it that obvious by following the sandwich approach. Do follow it by all means if you can write it clearly. Again, when you write AO3, so supposing you say the rat amphetamine study has been done, which supports that excessive dopamine leads to schizophrenia symptoms, you can link it back. You are linking it back when you say it's about schizophrenia. The examiner is reading your answer coherently. So they know that in AO2 you took schizophrenia as your topical exam area example, and now in AO3 they can see you've given the amphetamine study, which is directly relating with the topic which you took in AO2. That is them. So there is no need for the points to come exactly immediately after one another. Even if they're aligned by putting them in separate paragraphs, that's absolutely fine. Okay, now let's, like, having clarified this common errors that I've been seeing, let's read the question. Discuss holism and reductionism debate and refer to two topics you have studied. Two topics, not two or more. So please stick to two and definitely not less than two. Here they are being very exact. It can be year one topics, it can be year two topics. Does not have to be only year two topics. Before writing only, make your outline. In the paper also, many times they give you a space to make your outline. Sometimes they forget. Doesn't matter. Even if they've not given the space, you can use the top blank space in the question or that extra supplement to make your outline. What you need to make in your outline before you write anything is what are you going to cover in AO2, just to make sure that it does qualify for what you're covering it under and you're not making a mistake. Like for AO2, in this model answer, we can see schizophrenia has been taken to support reductionism. So if in your mind it's coming, I will take schizophrenia to support reductionism, just write it down in front of you like this very roughly. Think for a moment. Will you be able to really justify it as reductionist? Are you thinking of something like, let me take a diathesis stress model and show how both genes and biology and along with that family dysfunction also plays a role? Then you're not being reductionist, then you're actually supporting holism. So just pause, think the first topic which I'm taking for this first issue, is it relevant to that or not? In the same way, think what is going to be your second topic. The key thing is finalize your topics before writing them. So in this model answer, you can see conformity. Year one topic has been taken. Think, can I justify it in terms of holism? Yes, because we have seen conformity is about socio-cultural influence, and definitely socio-cultural influence comes in the top level of levels of explanation. It goes under holism. So yes. Okay, so make sure you have these things in place in your outline. Also think about your AO3 points. For 8 marks, I would recommend 4 points, 4 evaluation points. Try to balance between strengths and weaknesses. Like you could do something. One example is say 2 strengths, 1 weakness. Now you'll tell me this is imbalanced. So one of the strengths, just take a counterpoint. So that way you embed a weakness into one of the strengths. So though you have taken only 3 points in total, you do have 2 strengths and 2 weaknesses. I just advise against taking 4 points for AO3, which is worth only 8 marks. It becomes too excessive. And then students struggle with completing the answers. Just take 3 points, that is enough. For AO1, one issue I'm seeing when it comes to debates, issues in debates is normally students are best when it comes to AO1. Like if I'm to give a 20 mark on schizophrenia or social influence, students have a lot to write about schizophrenia, what it is, or say social influence, what is obedience and conformity for AO1. But for issues and debates, somehow they don't have enough to write. So they just keep on insisting on, this is the definition of reductionism, this is the definition of holism. I don't know what else to write in this. And if I give examples, that will become AO2. So what else I should write in AO1? See, in the official textbook, also by Professor Cox, there is complete detail on levels of explanation. So, what is making you feel that levels of explanation which talks about reductionism and holism will not be counted under that? I don't know why that confusion is there. And if you see levels of explanations covered in so much detail, very easily it makes for AO1. So, this is one thing genuinely I don't know the reason why students are not able to see that levels of explanation comes under this debate, and then they are just like at a loss of what to write under AO1. Just summarize levels of explanation. That's all that gives you so much of AO1. Like I have told you in the previous video, there's no fixed number of sentences or points that you have to give, but considering it's worth 8 marks, try to aim somewhere for say like 150 to 200 words to justify AO1. For AO2, it's just 4 marks. It becomes like half of AO1, so something around 100 words. You don't have to think too much about word count if you're just focusing on the content to be covered. But if you have to, you need some boundaries at least for initial practice. These are my suggestions. AO3 again, same like AO1, 150 to 200 words. More important for AO3 is following the peel format. Development is very important because what I just showed you 1 2 questions back, what is required on the mark scheme, effectiveness, detail, that is what counts. Quality counts rather than quantity. Just keep that as a principle in mind. Okay, now remaining I will help explain to you with the help of model answer. Let's see what is covered in AO1 here. Defi- Definitely I recommend begin this way. Reductionism definition. Behavior can be broken down into simple components or whatever definition you have learned. Behavior can be attributed to specific causes, anything like that. And then just a few general examples, not like year to year one examples, but broadly, because we know there are many types of reductionism. So, say if there's biological reductionism, that will explain behavior in terms of genes, neurotransmitters, brain structures. So, broad example, not making it specific to say schizophrenia or depression. Or if it is behavioral reductionism, then it'll boil down everything to stimulus response. So here you can see a very good effective paragraph, not only showing knowledge of what reductionism is, like not only definition but also understanding. When you read this, you feel the student understands what is reductionism because they've explained it further by saying, okay, these can be components, and if these are the components, then only these things will be considered. And of course these count as examples. In the last lesson, also, I briefly touched upon just like AO3 can be structured in PEEL, AO1 can be structured in KUE, knowledge, understanding, example. So, here you can see how knowledge is given first. This is what reductionism is. Understanding is given by giving some broad examples and examples within that, like within biological, behavioral, what can be there. So, it's a KUE structure, very effective. Same approach is taken for holism. Holism, definition wise, when behavior can be understood as a whole or within context, or you can just say it can be attributed to multiple factors and their combined effect. Understanding is it uh, like can attribute behaviors to social situations, relations, or culture. Means instead of breaking parts down, we keep important meaning of the broader contextual factors which are determining behavior. So that understanding or explanation is shown here. And then specific examples again without touching on any particular topics because that is done separately for AO2. So social cognitive approaches, they consider multiple interacting factors. Like you have learned in your syllabus, if we take social approach, influence of others and their behavior on our behavior, any persuasion coming from their side, relationships in the environment, broader culture or ways of living that we are born into, these type of things. Okay, now after giving reductionism and holism explanation, this is where students go at a loss. Then what are we supposed to write on? So now see the key part. If this is your confusion area also, what else you can cover in terms of levels of explanation? There are 5 levels of explanation, I believe, in the textbook. Like, as such, it can be looked at in terms of numbers of levels, but I think in your course you're following 5 levels. So just give like one line uh, example, and not even, you don't even need to give all of them, just maybe one, two, like most reductionist to most holistic, even that tends to be sufficient. So first let's see what's written here, then I'll give you other possibilities. Like biological level, we know is the most reductionist. You can bifurcate further. Even in biological, you can give like genes are more reductionist than neurochemistry or structure of anatomy of the brain, and then you can say that is even more reductionist than evolutionary. But like I told you, that is a little more nuanced. If you believe that 5 levels are given in the textbook and those you can, broadly look at, that's good. You don't need to go further than that. Then definitely environmental is the most holistic. Social and environmental, or you could say socio-cultural also. So each level focuses on different behaviors like brain chemistry experiences, or if we go at higher levels, social and all thought processes in cognitive and group influences in socio-cultural. Alternatively, like I said, if here next it switches to the debate's importance. If you just want to give levels of explanation instead of going into the debate as a whole, you can just outline the 5 levels. So you can talk about biological, cognitive, psychodynamic, social, and socio-cultural, or sometimes it's just called cultural, or whichever levels you have learned. You must have learned like a hierarchy or a pyramid of levels. Definitely, whichever you have learned, you can give. Okay, now otherwise you can do what is done in this model answer for even further elaboration. Let's say you don't know levels of explanation, or you're wondering what else can be written if we don't want to write about levels of explanation. You can write about the debate. Individually, holism and reductionism have been defined, but together, what do they make up for? That you can explain here. So, the debate is about how behavior should be studied, what approach should be taken. If we side with reductionism, we take it that laboratory experiments should be given and we should isolate causes over behavior. So, reductionism's importance can be in terms of scientific control and reliability. Holistic means we should look at behavior qualitatively. We should get detailed, rich data, and then we can not have that much reliability, but we can really increase scope of findings. So we can get the complexity of behavior. Both approaches, they differ in how they deal with behavior and how much complexity they are willing to take in. This is a good transitionary paragraph also to get into AO2. Means after this, when we bring in AO2, the two topics, we have just given some importance why we should look at it. That importance we will be able to highlight with the help of the examples that I will show you. So there is so much. I hope by now you've been able to see that you can cover within reductionism and holism. So it shouldn't confuse you as to what you should write under this. Now let's come to the AO2 topics. When it comes to AO2, first signpost as always, name for which side of the debate you're taking which topic explicitly. For reductionism, I'm taking schizophrenia, mention that. That also within schizophrenia, not everything is reductionist. So, specifically, what you're taking under schizophrenia, biological explanation, make it clear that way. Also, don't write just explanation if you're taking biological. For 20 marker rubric is effective, detailed, and clear clarity should be then the answer, and answer should be coherent, easy to read, well organized. So if you're not going to name things explicitly, it's going to be very difficult to read and you'll lose marks on all accounts. So say biological explanation. Next, give specific biological explanation of schizophrenia, like it has been attributed to high dopamine activity. In reductionism, you have argued that there's going to be a definite cause, right? That is what we brought about in the importance. So here we say it has a definite cause, high dopamine activity. You also said that behavior is broken down into specific bits. So here, schizophrenia is broken down into neurotransmitter imbalance that you are bringing about. Earlier in the beginning, I made a point about how if your answer is aligned, even if you've separated AO1 and AO2, it is not difficult to see which point is linking into which. So I hope you're able to see that now, that how AO1 was worded in the same way the example is worded. So though the example did not come immediately, say after the definition, it still is clearly linked to what was given in the definition. In fact, sometimes this approach can be better because you can see so many points under AO1 are getting integrated into this. Its importance is also being shown, its definition is also being shown through this example. Whereas if we would have taken a sandwich approach, maybe we would have been able to link the example, say, only to the definition, but not to the importance. Because that sandwich approach, it takes away the focus from like discussing things at length to just being very specific in linkage. Okay, then drug treatments have also come up, like typical antipsychotics, and they are also based on this explanation. We're not talking about treatment per se, but they also target dopamine receptors, showing clearly that dopamine is taken to be the cause for schizophrenia. Otherwise, these treatments would not be targeting that particular chemical. Okay, so this is how a clear reductionist explanation is seen. Now, coming to conformity, that is taken as the example for holism. So, again, signposting by explicitly stating this is the one we are taking for holism. Now, within this also, which, like I told you, mention explicitly, not all of conformity is holistic, but explanations such as normative, informative, social influence, they are holistic because they look at multiple factors which are like pushing people into yielding to group pressure, being group norm, social pressure, and the presence of others. So because so many multiple factors account for, say, normative social influence, because people want approval, so that is how it is a holistic explanation. So it supports the definition that was given earlier. Also, definitely it has to be understood with the group context. Means we are trying to say it's a topic which is inherently something that cannot be broken down, otherwise it is not understandable. So coherent group context has to be considered, then only we can see what conformity is. So that is how holism is necessary for explaining behaviors and interaction. Earlier we mentioned in levels of explanation that socio-cultural tends to be the highest level. So with conformity, we have been able to show why it is the highest to the most holistic level. Now, overall, I want you to see how the weightage given in this answer to AO2 is much less than AO1. And why you're able to see that clearly is because they are separated into two sections. So this justifies the marks. AO1 looks almost double than what is given in AO2. So it's not strictly that way, but you can see AO1 worth 8 marks, it looks justified in the way the answer is written. And AO2 worth 4 marks looks justified. Now AO3. Very similar to what I showed you in the shorter answer, that has to be the structure. So beginning with the strength of reductionism, in these debate type of questions, you can give strengths, weaknesses for either one side, also reductionism or holism or interactionist. For both, you can keep giving every point. So, strength of reductionism is behavior can be studied scientifically. This is the point being made. Example is again because schizophrenia was taken, like I told you, for alignment. Even if not using the sandwich approach, you can align in this way by giving the same example. So, dopamine imbalance has been taken that can be studied scientifically, like we saw in the development of antipsychotic drugs. Dopamine was taken as the cause of schizophrenia, so that cause got targeted in this treatment. Now, what is the strength of it? Like, how do we explain this as a strength? Clear practical application. Because we are able to pinpoint that this is the cause of this disorder, we've developed an intervention which is helping so many people with schizophrenia. But as a counterpoint, what we can say is still the drug treatment by itself does not cure the disorder. We know that many people have other symptoms that need to be addressed with the help of, say, other treatments. So, drugs can reduce the biological problems, but social withdrawal or emotional difficulties, so interactional problems basically, they require some other treatment. Here, we have not introduced the other treatment, but if you want, you can give an example, like, say, family dysfunction. That is the reason for such behaviors. So then family treatment can be given to solve it. Why it's not given here? Because it's just a counterpoint. It's not a full weakness point. That's why. So counterpoints are generally brief, 1 or 2 lines at most. But here, can you see like how a balance is being made in strengths and weaknesses by including counterpoint? If two strengths, two weaknesses are too much for 8 marks. Next strength you can see, it increases reliability and objectivity of research. So that's the point being made. What is the evidence for this? Because if we are going to use lab based research, then we know definitely we can control extraneous variables and we can standardize procedures. For example, again, because we are talking about dopamine constantly, brain scans can be taken, fMRI scans, for example, can be taken, and whether dopamine areas are active when, say, a person is hallucinating or having delusions. That can be seen with brain scan methods, which are very objective. There are no biases in them because it's a machine doing the recording and not the individual, the researcher giving their subjective opinions of what is happening. So, this is an explanation of why very standardized and very controlled research is enabled by reductionist explanations. So it just becomes easier to replicate. It's also credible because it makes psychology more scientific. Experimental research always gives psychology a higher scientific status, puts it at par with hard sciences like, say, biology or chemistry, that way. So, definitely. Now, coming to a weakness. Weakness of reductionism is that it oversimplifies complex behavior. This is something we have noted in holism also, that holism does not simplify, reductionism simplifies, but as a weakness, we need to develop it fully. Why is it a weakness? First, giving example. Because if we look at schizophrenia fully in terms of dopamine, then we are not looking at relationships or life events. So we are not looking at social stressors basically. Like I told you earlier, this was just a counterpoint. Here it's a full weakness point. So more specific examples are given. So that's why we need to look at full level of explanation, not just the description of behavior. So this is the explanation of why reductionism is very oversimplified, because it doesn't help to deeply understand why a behavior is happening. It just shows one component of it, or just like broadly outlines one component of it. That is what it is limited to. And here we can bring in holism, the other side of the debate. Because reductionism is so oversimplified, holistic approaches are needed. They can give a complete understanding of behavior. So, this is the link, that because of this weakness, a way has been paved for the other side of the debate. Now, there are many alternative points that you can take for evaluation. This is not the only evaluation that you can take. I know to many of your minds it must be coming, but I have lots of strengths and weaknesses to give for holism. So let me give that. Of course, you can give that. Everyone's evaluation is not going to look identical. So, what other possibilities are there? I would like to take that as the last like brainstorming topic for this video. So let's see. You could also say how holism better and helps to understand behavior, making it more applicable to understanding real life phenomena. Like you could take, say, for example, conformity. It has helped us to understand many real life concerns which keep emerging in psychology. Like, say, people take drugs because of peer pressure. So, why this happens? We are getting better understanding, so we can develop interventions. How people can resist group pressure, basically. Alternatively, obedience you could give. Just because conformity was taken before, so considering alignment, I suggested that you take that as an example. But you can take some other example. So it does not have to be from AO2. It's just that it makes the answer a little better. But if you're not able to think, say, of conformity, obedience, many of you are more familiar with, then take that. Obedience has helped to understand real life events like Holocaust, because again socio-cultural perspective is taken, which is holistic. So such dire events in history we have been able to understand because of obedience, and therefore again we can do interventions like, say, whistleblowing, or warning people against blindly obeying authority, and we can prevent such discourses in everyday life. Also, you could talk about theoretical and research support for holism. For example, with approaches, you can integrate this. There have been great researchers, humanistic psychologists like Maslow and Rogers, or existential psychologists like Rollo May or Viktor Frankl, who have spoken about how a behavior should never ever be reduced to any particular factor or explanation, because the holistic perspective is needed to understand the uniqueness of every human being. And then you could give one or two studies or proposals they've given, like you could give Maslow's need theory or Rogers' studies on his counseling with his clients, in which he has shown how integration of the whole human being determines whether they will show positive growth or not. So these type of examples you can give to support holism. Of course, any other studies which you have learned you can take as scientific evidence. For reductionism, I think more or less everything is covered, what is given here. And of course, you can also take an interactionist point of view. For example, how researchers can first begin with being reductionist, like for, say, schizophrenia again. Some researchers can look only at the biological component, some can look at cognitive, some can look at family. And then they can integrate all of this together to form a full holistic explanation. So, how practically there is a need to do reductionist research on individual components, because it's too difficult to do holistic studies and look at multiple causes in like one experiment. But then these individual experiments can be integrated or combined into one single perspective. That also you can present. So these are other possibilities of what your evaluation can look like. This was just a model answer which I showed you. With that, I have reached the end of this lesson, which is on section B. The last video for this series will be on section C, and I will try to upload it soon. That will be psychology applied to work. If you have any feedback for this video, any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments box below. Please do not message me personally with anything that I'm covering on the channel. I do read your comments. It takes me some time, but I do get back to you on any queries or feedback that you have for these videos. And in the meanwhile, until I put up section B, keep studying and do your best on the paper. All the best from my side for everyone having their exams upcoming, and I will see you very soon. Thank you for watching this video.